For those of you that don't know Mungo, he's been in the out-of-home advertising industry for quite a few years, holding senior roles at, amongst others, Posterscope, PrimeSite and Global. Throughout this, Mungo's been at the forefront of positive innovation. He currently co-chairs the Out-of-Home Standards Committee and is the Commercial Product and Platform Director at Global. He's going to be telling us a little bit more about how DAX is going to grow out-of-home.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to be here. Feels a bit strange being in this sort of large space, not least because I spent the last 12 months in a relatively small sort of box room looking at a screen. But I've been relatively lucky. Our thoughts, of course, are with those who've had more challenging times over the last year. Outdoor, of course, has had a really tricky 12 months as a result of the changing travel patterns. And those sort of forced changes that we've all had to make have meant, I think, that we've perhaps had to reprioritise some things in our lives. And worth just reflecting on that for a moment, I think one of the things we've had to reprioritise is presence, the importance of presence in order to conduct our business. Is it quite so important to be in the same room with people as it was before? Now, we've obviously been in the extreme, and that balance will get redressed. But I don't think that anyone expects it to go back to quite the same place as it was before. And the other sort of thing that I think we're thinking about slightly differently is the manner in which we execute our business, right from clients through agencies, certainly through to media owners. How can we try to automate and improve the efficiency with which we can make business transactions, and particularly in our world, turn our advertising on and off quickly and efficiently? So you've got this sort of coming together of a need to be able to operate anywhere and a need to be able to operate efficiently and effectively in an automated way. And that, I think, brings an opportunity for us in the out-of-home space, an opportunity to perhaps capture some of that change in prioritization and see if we can use that to accelerate a pathway that we were certainly on, but in light of the experience we've been through, perhaps just becomes a little bit more important. And so that's the sort of the journey that I want to share with you today, is what we're doing at Global to address that and to look to the future and give you a little bit of context of the journey that we've been through.
DAX Audio. DAX connects brands to their audience through the world's most loved digital audio content. DAX uses a diverse set of audience data, blending data from publishers and those from our own exclusive partnerships, giving you more insight into your audience and helping your campaign targeting become more refined than ever before. What's more, you can update your campaign instantaneously to match those different moments to different audiences. You also get access to our award-winning Listener Insight ID tool, giving you unique campaign insights and measurements in real time, so you're always up to speed on how your campaign's doing. Crucially, you can also see who you're reaching with your content, what they're listening to, and on what device. That means whether you're looking to drive awareness, relevance, or brand fame across different markets, we've got you covered. DAX, because brands should be seen and heard.
That's a bit awkward, I hear you say. I thought we were here for an outdoor conference, and you've just shown me an audio reel. And that's true. And I think the reason that I've shown that is I just wanted to spend a few minutes giving you the context of the global DAX proposition. DAX is the audio platform that Global have for programmatic. And That started back in 2014. And they had a vision in 2014 about how they could bring the content that Global were generating and were partners with to clients in order to sort of bring together brands to reach their audience through the world's most loved digital audio content in one simple buy. And the simplicity was actually a key driver of how they wanted to go about that journey. So this was 2014 with this vision. And Global decided that they wanted to start this journey, and the first thing they did was obviously they had the audio content already. They needed then to concentrate on the elements that would inform the decision making as well as building the platform itself. Data and targeting and measurement in order to ensure that advertisers understood the value of what they were getting and the effect that the programmatic platform was having. So this was a big investment. This was a serious move into this space. And that was 2014. Wind forward to 2019, and a couple of interesting things have happened. Absolutely, that platform has found an important place and has grown, been part of the growth in digital audio revenue from that sort of early nascent stage in 2014 up to a significant amount of money. Figures here from 2019. But at the same time, and this is really the important part, the radio non-programmatic revenue also grew significantly. And so that was growing at the same time as the programmatic revenue, looking to grow the overall opportunity that radio was offering to clients, and as a result of that, growing the medium and the sector. And that growth continuing on into 2020, and will be continuing on even further with the introduction of an increased popularity of things like podcasts, etc. Just if anyone sort of is less familiar with DAX, just to sort of let you know, in terms of audio, this is for inserting ads into any online listening. So if you're listening on a connected device to the internet, the ads that you would hear in the content programming that you're listening to are generated as a result of the programmatic bid and ad serving process. And in fact, if you were listening to the same program on a connected and a non-connected device, a DAB device, then in the same ad break, you might actually hear different ads. So it's really an extraordinary piece of technology. Having started in the UK, that has grown, and DAX has gone on to also work in the US and in Canada. And at the core of DAX was that it was not only a platform for global content, it was also an opportunity for others with content to use that technical expertise to be able to surface their own ad opportunities. And so there's a wide range of content providers that also engaged as partners in DAX. So there Global were, an audio company having invested in programmatic and built a DAX platform. And then in 2018, they decided that they wanted to be in the outdoor marketplace. And a number of companies came together. I was a part of one of those. And the sort of short brief was, you know that thing that we've done in audio? Is there any chance you could do that in outdoor for us as well? Sort of a nice sort of open brief, build DAX outdoor, and make it the platform for brands to be seen. Global, just to put that in context, if any of you don't know, have a broad range of outdoor inventory. classic inventory across a range of formats and environments, and also digital inventory of a range of shapes, and again in different environments. So a broad set of inventory to be dealing with and thinking about in terms of how we build and how we bring this platform to life. Multiple formats, classic, digital, multiple ways of serving content onto those. Roadside, we have limitations in how much motion, but we have environments where we can run short video content on those. We absolutely understand the power of context. Context not just of the creative, but also of the placement, the location of the ad itself. And when we were thinking about the way in which we approach DAX, that became an important part of the thinking. And if you want context, you want to be able to make sure that data can be used to trigger that and make best use of the opportunity that a client wants to use their own data, or indeed we could supply some of our own data to help make informed decisions to them. I talked about simplicity at the heart of the way in which they wanted to bring the audio product to clients, and that also runs through the outdoor product. And that meant thinking about audience and how we can simply incorporate audience into the metrics of buying and the transaction process. And I'm going to dwell a little bit more on that later. But also, of course, making the access absolutely instant. How do we go from a position where somebody says, I want to buy and I want to get it up on a screen immediately? In terms of connecting outdoor to make it a more seamless, automated process, there are actually sort of broadly two ways you can do that. The first way is that you, from your market position in classic or digital, you offer essentially guaranteed inventory that somebody could buy, that they're definitely going to get a display in 2 weeks' time, or definitely going to get a display on a certain Sunday period in the future, both for classic and for digital. And that can be traded through open direct protocols that have been established and are increasingly finding a common standardization in the industry. Tim's with us somewhere. Tim's been doing quite a lot of work with the Industry Standards Committee, helping us to make that happen so that we can work together better as an industry. And Global are definitely a part of this. We're committed to this. We think that there is a role for this in improving that seamless transaction and ease of operation. But the bit that I'm focusing on more today is the sort of second route to market, which is for digital only, and really a non-guaranteed approach to purchasing. It's the ability to make a decision at a moment in time, I want to buy something now, or I want to stop buying something now. And for that we use the Open RTB API protocol, and we need an SSP and a DSP to bring that together. So that's our route to market, if you like. That's our focus, the OpenRTB route. But our real sort of objective is to grow outdoor, exactly the same as we did with audio. And therefore the question is, what's the prize? What are we looking for and what's the objective? And if you think about outdoor, we're doing about 1.3 billion, something like that at the moment. Around 50-60% of that is digital. So we're in, a good position, and that's been growing over the years. Obviously difficult this year. But here's the real target: digital display revenue at around 6 billion. Now, it's obviously different to outdoor, absolutely, but it has some areas that we think that we can add benefit to in order to attract some revenue from that area. Definitely, ease of transaction is one of those. There is no doubt that the ease of transaction is an attractive mechanism for a client in order to get their product out to market. So we've got ease of transaction driving that. And we think that that's a real opportunity to deliver something, if we can, through DAX to improve our ease of access to that market. I think the other area is that we know that there are challenges in the display market with regard to GDPR consent, with regard to personalization, with regard to retargeting. So this is an area of ad spend which is being challenged at the moment. It's in flux. And that gives us an opportunity to address clients with an opportunity to maybe think a bit differently and again grow some of that revenue for outdoor. So that was our objective, and off we went. We built our transaction platform. We were fortunate. We have a lot of very talented technical people in the business, and we got them onto that task, and away they beavered to develop the platform itself, to do the transactions, to serve the ads. We then had to consider the audience valuation. What's the approach that we're going to take? And we knew that we wanted to talk specifically about a transaction in an audience-orientated way. And we wanted to be able to make sure that we could distribute that content both to our own screens and also, because like audio, we wanted to have partners to be able to distribute that to our partners as well. And we've done that. We've put that together, and we now connect to about 11 DSPs currently, a combination of omnichannel and specific outdoor-focused DSPs. And we're connecting an advertiser pretty quickly straight through to their ability to bring their product to market. And in a strange way, you'd say, well, that's great, Mungo. Thank you very much. You've done the job. What more is there to say? And I think I would have loved that to have been an easy process. But it's not been that easy. There have been a few challenges along the way. And in the spirit of this conference, which has actually been going for, Adrian will tell me, but let's say 7 years, something like that. It sort of followed the path of automation over the course of the years that this conference has been held. And I thought it would be right to share some of the challenges, because I think that we still need to address some of those going forwards. I know this is a rather complex chart, and I apologise for that, but this is good. Some examples of the sorts of things I'm talking about, and you'll see where I'm going with it. This is all about trying to create standardization to make things easy, not only for now, but for the future. So some of the challenges that we've had to overcome while we've been building the platform are these sorts of questions. You know, how do we count audience? What's a play? Is a play a person, or is a play a group of people? What's this, an impression multiplier? If we've got an impression multiplier, that means a group of people are associated with a single serving of an ad. What's the price that's linked to that? Because it's going to change every time. So we've got a bid response, and then we've got a multiplier based upon the impressions. When do we confirm the trade? Do we confirm the trade when the ad has played out, or do we confirm the trade when the bid request has been accepted? Seems like a small difference, but actually it's a material difference. It's a material difference in the way that DSP engines, particularly omnichannel DSP engines, work. How do we codify the frame? We're selling a single frame, but that frame has a series of attributes that are linked to it. Its location, its format size, that sort of stuff. How do we make sure that goes across correctly? Because those parameters don't exist very easily in the OpenRTB 2.5 spec, which is sort of what we're loosely basing the work that we've done on. In the same way, how do we deal with things that they are asking, particularly again omnichannel, because they've got an infrastructure in place that we don't have an answer to. I don't want to serve an IP address, but I get asked for one, and it becomes a mandatory part of what people are looking for, because that's what they're used to in online, to determine where the ad is being served, what site it's on, what page it's on, is it GDPR compliant? These are things that we don't need to do. They need to be managed differently. We actually serve, across that range of DSPs at the moment, we serve just the frame ID itself in 3 different places in our bid requests, because different people are looking for it in different places. We have a range of environments, and there's no real conformity around how those are named. In the UK, we've got something called Space, which nicely compartmentalizes and organizes that, but it doesn't exist everywhere. And there's no sort of single taxonomy for that. There's an hour delay between the actual bid request and the serving of the ad, just make sure that the creative gets there, all that sort of stuff. But it creates a question mark about how that gets dealt with in pacing. Am I pacing from the moment the bid request has been done or the moment the ad is being served? And what version am I working on? I mean, they've been writing OpenDirect 3.0. We haven't really got to OpenDirect 2.5 properly yet. So again, how do you deal with this? So all of these are details, and there's more of these details. And why does this matter? Because you could say again, well, hang on, Mungo, you've just done all this stuff. I've seen it. You've just said you've connected, so you've solved all of those things. And to a certain extent, we have. We've solved them as we've gone along. But this is a journey. And I think that we and others, and we're certainly not the first people to be doing this, others have been there in the space, of course, we're all going to continue to need to change going forwards. And we're going to want to do things slightly differently. And I've avoided the sort of 3-pin plug in a 2-pin socket picture, but you could put that in your mind. I mean, at the end of the day, if the 2 elements of the connection have not clearly articulated what they're expecting to happen, or the specifications they're expecting to bring the 2 parties together, the end result is that the transaction or the connection won't work. And as we get more and more connected, making a change in one area increasingly affects everybody else. So how do we bring those standardizations together? And I don't think we've answered that yet. I think that's a question. There are a few people that are involved. IAB in the UK. In fact, I was on a call this morning, and there was definitely a move to be more involved in this area. But it's really the tech lab that sort of drives the real publishing of these standards. But how engaged are we as an industry? There's a World Out of Home industry body. Is that the right place, or is that not really the best way of driving it and making these decisions and owning some of that standardization going forwards? Don't know. The OAAA in America have definitely been looking at this, doing work in this area as well, almost without thinking about what's going on here, and yet there are implications in different markets for exactly the same thing. And in the UK, we have the Industry Standards Committee, which has representatives both from Outsmart and from IPAO. They've got a watching brief in this area, but it's not really what's driving them. So they haven't really taken on the responsibility for saying we should be driving this. So I think this is an unanswered question, but it's an important one, because if we believe in what we're doing, the industry needs a degree of maturity, and that maturity requires cooperation, and that cooperation requires proper management of standards going forwards. So I talked a bit about audience. We are lucky in the UK. We have Root as our arbiter of audience, and that gives some great information, and we would take that as our audience of choice. Thank you very much. I'll take audience, I'll put it into DAX. We'll work on all adults because that keeps life simple. That data is actually available down to 15 minutes, so we can get a nice CPM at a 15-minute level. Not everyone can get Root data, because Root doesn't cover every single type of eventuality and every type of place that a media owner might have product that they could sell. So there are instances where we might have to say, we're not using route data. How do we make that clear to the buyer that the audience data is slightly different from the audience data they may have expected, in order that they can make a judgment about their comfort with using that audience data? That's a question. So we've got this challenge of how we make sure this value is correctly put across. But the problem is that if you just use audience itself, because we're also working in an industry where we've got transactions happening in the more sort of traditional historical sense, those transactions take place broadly valuing a product by its physical characteristics, how big it is, where it is, that sort of stuff, what shape it is even. And that is a bit incompatible with a valuation which is only based on audience. And this is a slightly tricky thing that, again, I think we're sort of wrestling with a bit as an industry. Let me give you an example of that. Here you've got a 6-sheet, a 48-sheet, 96-sheet. Let's say broadly, if you were buying a 1 in 6 time on a digital 6-sheet, might be about, let's say, £300, £400, £500, something like that. 48-sheet, maybe £1,000. 96-sheet, maybe £3,500. But you can see that there's a sort of accepted variation in those. If you put those three sites, a 6, a 48-sheet, and a 96-sheet, on the same road, in the same location, reaching exactly the same audience, and you charged exactly the same cost per thousand for those three, you can immediately see all of a sudden, okay, you'll get a slightly bigger total value for the 48 and the 96 sheet because size is taken a bit into route, but it's probably not really reflective of where we think those values are. So we have to deal with that. We deal with that with a sort of format multiplier, which sort of brings it back to a bit more what people would expect, because you're also paying not only for the audience, but for the value of the impact the visual impact that particular ad location is presenting. Just continuing on the price stream for a moment, we would traditionally expect that we would probably give all of the frames in one group a similar price point. That's generally how we would be used to working. We've got about 4,500 frames. But if you take the route data, you end up with a different valuation on audience for each frame for more or less every 15 minutes. There's some duplication on days in the modelling, but broadly every 15 minutes. And on our 4,500 frames, that actually would give us about 36 million prices across the year. So that's a slightly different way of thinking about price that we have to juggle with the same conversations that we're having with clients about the traditional route. And it's just finding the right way through that quandary. It's really, I guess, I've put it here, I think this is part of the sort of push and pull that we're in at the moment. Maybe historically we were a bit more supply controlled. We had a product, we created that as a seller, as a media owner. We called it a product, gave it a specific price and said, would you like to buy this? A bit like putting it in the supermarket and saying, here is my product, here's my single item, here's my group of items, this is my price. But our programmatic world is much more data-driven. It's much more about saying, I want to make an instant decision about a particular frame at a particular point. And the question is, are we thinking about pricing that in a different manner, perhaps more dynamically, as a result of that, seeing that demand? And is that a model for the future? I don't think we're comfortable quite being there yet, but it is a journey that we're on. It's a bit more stock market. It's not quite that, but it's sort of accepting that there is more dynamic movement in prices than we are perhaps used to. And we will see that because we will have dashboards, and other people who have dashboards building their own SSPs and DSPs at the other side will be able to see the instant activity that is taking place in terms of demands and activity going through, transacting into display. So we've created our platform. We've got our inventory together, good degree of inventory, and we've sorted our pricing, albeit we've got some questions, but we're on that journey. But I think there's one more thing that we need, really, and that is we need confidence from clients that this is an okay channel to plan in order to be able to execute their campaigns effectively. And that confidence is about ensuring that there is a consistent supply that's available. It's no good somebody saying, okay, I think I'll have a programmatic outdoor campaign, get in there and there's nothing to purchase because everything's been sold already in the upfront purchase cycle. We surface every single frame individually with its frame ID, with its location, with all of the characteristics that is needed for someone to make a decision to say, I want to buy absolutely that screen in that moment in time, using whatever data or decisioning that they want. And we actually set aside 1 in 6 of our sort of loop, 16% share of time, specifically for DAX, so that there is always inventory available, so that every minute on every spot there is a DAX slot which becomes available for someone at that moment in time, if they want to make a purchase. That means that a client can be confident there's a consistent supply. That means we're surfacing on every frame 60 an hour, and, because I can't do the maths, 1,440 a day. That's quite an investment in strategic positioning, but I think it's a really important one to give clients that confidence to explore this channel. And we do that. DAX has now grown. We've got screens across a whole range of our environments, and we're lucky enough to have partners involved in that as well. So we're also into theme parks and residential areas and motorway service stations, and just broadening out the number of places that a client can come to from a single point of contact to get access to a wide range of product. So what's all that meant for clients? I've got 3 sort of brief examples here. It just gives an illustration of how we've been able to use the platform to help clients meet their objectives. The first one here is TSB, who had some activity for spend and save. And this was quite interesting because this actually was a combination of an approach through audio and outdoor. TSB wanted to use their own data. He worked with a company called InfoSum, who were capable of doing that in a way which was GDPR compliant and ensured security of the data that TSB were using. That was added to global listener data, so we could match that data to devices in order to serve ads. We listened to and measured the result of that, and that in turn informed areas where we wanted to display outdoor advertising. So really bringing together data and applications across different media channels through the DAX platform. And the result of that was a positive increase in completed current accounts applications in the areas where people were exposed to the campaign as opposed to the areas where they were not exposed. So a successful case study. The second is a COVID one, and this was Zaflora, and their objective was to serve ads at a moment in time when it was most appropriate, going back to that context point for people, and where there was an R number that was greater than 1, they wanted to serve an ad, and when the R number dropped below 1, in the hope that it would, they could immediately stop serving those ads and pull them off, and they could do that by area of the country. If you remember at the time, there was a much more sort of localized approach back in the autumn. And quote there was that the flexibility of DAX Outdoor enabled us to adjust our digital out-of-home strategy in real time, we effectively and efficiently reached our audiences and delivered a proven sales uplift as a result. So effective, efficient, and results. And then my final example on this is a campaign by Free Now, the hail riding app. And they had an interesting proposition, which was that if you get congestions on the underground or moments when the underground isn't working properly, that's a moment when people might want to suddenly think about alternative methods of transport. And so they used data derived from TfL in order to work out where there might be an occurrence and then serve an ad in the locations where they thought there may be public transport issues at a point in time, and alternative arrangements could be offered. And the quote here, the campaign demonstrated the value of programmatic outdoor, enabling Free Now to be live at the right time, right locations, maximizing relevance and efficiency. So the right time, right locations, efficiency, simplicity, this all feels like it's meeting the brief, really, going in the right direction. So I guess the question for us is, what's our confidence in the longer term? How do we think this is going to play out? World of predictions, always a difficult one. And in order to sort of give some thought back to this, I actually looked back a little bit, and this is quite an interesting chart. This talks about the reality and the predictions, not of programmatic, but of just outdoor digital expenditure. So back in 2010, there was really very little outdoor digital expenditure. By 2011, that had increased to something like 150, 160,000, something like that. 160 million, sorry. And the question then was, what would this look like in 2020? What would it look like 10 years ahead? And the answer that was sort of commonly given, and these were taken out of stuff that was made public, was, well, I think it would double. I think it would double in 20 years. Yeah, I mean, it was a reasonable bet. And there we are, about 3-4 years later, already, you could see by the line, it had reached that projection of doubling. And the projection then of what it will be like in 2020 is, do you know what? It will double. It will double. And about a year later, that projection had been moved on, and it'll probably be more than double. It'll be, significantly up. And actually, by 2019, we'd already reached that projection, and if it wasn't for the difficulties in 2020, it would have continued to go higher. So there is a sort of feeling that perhaps we don't always anticipate how much things might change in the future. And that's really encapsulated. I've borrowed a couple of quotes from some very smart people just to sort of illustrate this point, really. I think that we're great at saying everything is going to change tomorrow. I've built this DAX platform. It's going to be amazing. Suddenly the inventory is, the world is going to change. And we've probably been saying that maybe for a year or so, and others have been saying that. And it takes a bit longer. It just does take a bit longer to get through. But what Bill was saying here was that, you overestimate what happens in the next couple of years, sort of because you want it to, but you easily also underestimate what's going to happen in the next 10 years. And I think we are going to see some of that in programmatic going forwards. And part of what's going to help that is also our ability to harness technology. If you'd have gone back 4 or 5 years, we would have thought this was far too difficult for outdoor. Or at least a real challenge. And the rate at which technology is helping us to overcome some of this connectivity and distribution of content in this way is quite remarkable. It's certainly a long way from the start of my career when I was filling out carbon copy bits of paper and sending them off to different places in the hope that somebody would pick them up and post an ad in the right place. So we've made some real progress, and Moore here, who was of course the creator of the semiconductor and went on to be CEO of Intel, talks about the power of technical development doubling every 2 years, and I think we'll definitely see more progress to help us reach that 10-year growth opportunity in the future.
DAX Outdoor is the programmatic solution for advertisers. DAX Outdoor helps brands access digital outdoor programmatically at scale. DAX consolidates everything within one easy-to-use platform, including relevant data from global and our partners. DAX lays out the strengths of individual sites, showing you their physical attributes and impacts at any given time. This means through real-time trading, you can now buy your target audience at the right place, the right time, all within the hour, helping you trade on impacts rather than a percentage share of time. You can also optimize your creative messages using dynamic triggers, upweight your campaign, change locations, or update your campaign time bands based on audience data. Plus, you also get access to all of DAX's latest measurement tools to map out how effective your campaign has been. This means whether you're looking to drive awareness, relevance, or fame, we've got you covered. DAX, because brands should be seen and heard.
So I just want to say thank you, really. I mean, I'm enjoying the journey that we're on with the creation of DAX, but I also enjoying the journey that we're on with our colleagues, our competitors, and the rest of the industry. And I think we've got a lot more work to do together to continue to grow outdoor, but I absolutely believe we have the opportunity to do that.
Do you want to have a quick seat? As always, I've got 1,000 questions. I'm getting a bit of reverb. I've got 1,000 questions. Now, there we go. Questions, but there's loads of questions coming through from the YouTube live channel as well, and I'm wondering if any of the audience have got any questions too. So, for a little while. Wanted to start with this one from Stephanie Gutnick. Where are the budgets coming from for the majority of the digital out-of-home spend through DAX?
Thank you, Stephanie, for that. I think this is early days. I think, you know, the reality is that there is going to be some cross-fertilisation to begin with from outdoor budgets and people testing to see whether outdoor in programmatic is right for them. So I think that there is some revenue that is potentially coming from money that might have been spent in outdoor, but we are absolutely definitely seeing revenue that's coming from clients who would only have spent with us as a result of the opportunity to do so programmatically. We've had that from this country. We've also had revenue come in from areas that we wouldn't have expected because the opportunity is there to do so. So I think you want me to put a figure on that? You know, I'd have to hedge my bets and say 50-50 at the moment, but let's see how it goes.
Fair one. One slightly controversial one, maybe. Does it make sense for DAX to be owned by Global, or would it be better for it to be an independent company? No one put their name to that one, by the way.
Well, on behalf of my owners, I'm not sure I'm going to give you a clarity on that. It is DAX is proudly owned by Global, and I have no expectation that it will be owned by in any other way.
Good. Slightly easier one. Are there any plans? Still a little bit challenging. Are there any plans for outside of the UK? Are you going to expand it to Europe or any other markets?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because Global do, of course, own some outdoor advertising businesses in other markets. They have really been left to run themselves in their own markets in the way that they feel most appropriate. That was a sort of strategic decision that was taken fairly on as far as DAX and programmatic involvement is concerned. I think that's a watching brief. We'll wait and see. There's some really interesting stuff that some of the other markets are doing, and we just have to work out what the best way of looking at that is going forward. It could be about consolidation. It could be about allowing each area to operate on their own, to be decided.
No, then. Not yet. Has anyone got from the audience at the moment? A few more here. You talked about a lot of change in your organisation, and obviously there's loads going on in the industry. In terms of you need to upskill people. The mic isn't working at the moment. Do you need to upskill people? Do you need to change your sales team? What do you need to teach them in order to be able to really sell the way that you want to make things accessible for advertisers?
Yeah, I mean, that's a broader question than just the DAX platform. Going back to the driver of simplicity and ease for clients, a strategic decision in global is to allow the sales teams to operate across audio and outdoor and programmatic DAX. And so it's there is, as a result of that, definitely some reskilling that needs to take place, because the people in outdoor will need to get up to speed with audio and vice versa, and programmatic itself has its own languages and elements that have to be learned. So yeah, there's some changes in skill sets, but I think that's a good, healthy thing, and we generally only learn and grow individually as well as professionally by being given the opportunity to embrace areas that perhaps we're not so familiar with and make that part of our skill set. So yeah, that's definitely a journey we're on.
From YouTube, which is who are the main DAX's main media owner partners, other than yourselves, obviously?
Our partners at the moment in the outdoor sector. Yeah, so we're currently working. Well, I think the first thing to say is that actually in the platform, when we're serving bid requests, we don't serve information on specifically who the partner is, because it's entirely agnostic to us. We don't want them to know whether it's a global client or a partner client. What we tell them is what the frame is, where it is, what the environment, the location, everything that they need to know about to be able to make a decision about the audience. The people who are actually bringing those opportunities to us at the moment include Ad Media, LNX, C-Screens, 30-Second Media. These sort of companies have been working with us, and we're talking to more, and we'd love to have some more if they want to come and join us.
Sorry, I've got a few more to look through. Another one from YouTube. Why did you call it DAX Outdoor when the industry has typically moved from outdoor to out of home as its moniker?
Sorry, why do we specifically call it DAX Outdoor
rather than out of home?
Outdoor rather than out of home is really a global positioning decision. They just felt outdoor goes back to simplicity. Outdoor is simple. That's what we do, and that's the naming convention that is used across global about the medium.
They're coming in thick and fast now, so I'm going to jump back to one. You mentioned that you mainly use route data at the moment, and obviously that's the UK currency. I see Jose from Mobilise in the audience, and I was wondering whether there's plans to accept, as a sort of standard, other currencies for audience in the near future.
Yeah, I guess this is a bit tricky. First of all, we are really lucky that we have Root. Root is an established audience set that everyone understands and has confidence in how those numbers have been put together, so that when they're making a purchase based on that, they absolutely understand it, as I sort of said in the charts. There are those areas of the business, someone like C-Screens who've got some panels in theme parks and what have you. That's really difficult to measure en route. So there may have to be other alternative measures of audience, and we'd happily incorporate those if we feel that they are as rigorous as they can be, and then we will be clear with the purchaser that it's a different measurement of audience in order to help them make that decision. Would we set second or third audience sets along that as alternatives? I think we probably wouldn't. I mean, it's an open question, I guess, at the moment. I think we probably wouldn't, because that's really up to the buyer to use that data to make a decision about whether that is what they want to use to inform a purchase decision. So if they want to have a separate data source, perhaps use it as an index against a route, or just apply it because they feel it's more relevant to their particular campaign, then there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to use a data processing platform to use that as the trigger to make the purchase. So I've got clarity that it can be used. I'm just not sure whether we want to add the complexity of alternatives within our own bid request offerings.
So would that mean it's incumbent on the buyers of the space to accept different currencies out of route, or would that, how does that work?
Well, in the UK, the whole industry, because the IPA are involved through the IPAO, accept route as a currency. So there is an established currency that broadly the whole market accepts. If somebody wants to use a different currency, then they have the right to do that. Of course they do. They just have to work out how they're going to use that to trigger their decision-making process. And Programmatic is designed to allow that to happen.
Another question from YouTube. Are many brands using DAX to upweight or optimize a linear campaign, or are they all pure programmatic or direct campaigns from online?
Yeah, there's all three of those, I guess. We've had some that are pure programmatic, and we don't have any knowledge of them doing anything else in the outdoor space. We've had some which is we're doing some outdoor and we're going to add some programmatic to that. And also we're exploring obviously the sort of cross-channel between audio and outdoor and seeing if we can bring that a bit closer together, as we've been exploring a bit in the discussion, as I said, with TSB. So yeah, a range of places.
I think that's the end of the questions, so we'll probably stop your grilling for now. And yeah, thank you very much, Mungo. It was great.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.